one of our mentoring through a DEIB lens, we had Brandon Moss and Sarah Moore sharing their experiences with us and some of the gems that they shared with us. Just going to throw those out there. Some of you will recall the conversation and remember, yeah, that was, I remember that theme. But I want to remind folks, especially folks who might be joining us for the first time today, some of the conversation that we had, we talked about how mentoring is a relationship. We talked about how there is so much talent out there and that mentoring is about sharing with each other in the spirit of openness. We also talked about imposter syndrome and how that can come up for folks and how mentors can play a role in helping to support us, beyond this feeling that we have about ourselves of wondering if we're in the right place. We talked about how you don't know what you don't know, and how mentors can fill such a great role with helping us recognize what are the things that we don't know just yet. And that if there is any type of delay, even though we might feel like we're ready, mentors can be so helpful in helping us understand, okay, there are some other skill sets that I might need to build before moving into the next role. There were some Xable quotes that I pulled out because I just thought they were so key to the conversation. Brandon said, people need to grow up or grow out. And I loved that, right? Because it's like, how do we rise within our organizations? Or is it time to move somewhere else, right? So that our skill sets continue to build and we continue to be challenged. And Sarah shared with us, she said, it's really important to embrace our own humility, right? So as mentors, being able to receive feedback is really key to that part of the relationship. And so much more that we discussed. Once again, it is recorded, so feel free to go back and pull up that recording and check it out yourself. I'm going to move us into today's conversation, and what a privilege it is to be here to moderate this conversation with Emily Pierson-Brown, who is the Associate Principal and People Culture Manager at Perkins, Eastman, and Kenya Bryant, who is the Executive Director at Ingleside at King Farm. And so we are going to just, they're going to pour into us today with all of their experience and no pressure. But if you knew these two, and the reason why their names came up is because there's so much we can learn from them and so much that they have experienced that we're excited to hear about today. All right. So Kenya and Emily, Kenya, if we can start with you, please introduce yourself and share some background on your career journey.
Well, good afternoon. Kenya Bryant. I get the honor to be the executive director, as Jennifer said, for Ingleside at King Farm. We're located in the lovely Rockville, Maryland area, and I think my career journey is an interesting one. So I really appreciate being a part of this conversation because mentorship really guided my career. I am definitely one of those that proves that it doesn't have to look like what everybody else does. And so my career journey was I like to say, there were detours, and each of those detours built up tools to put in my toolkit to get me to where I am today. And so I actually have a few degrees, and one of those degrees that kind of branched into two is that I actually have a degree in computer science. So I started my career in that side. I like to say I'm a geek in stilettos, and then that love um, truly fell in love with people. I know that sounds cliche, but began nonprofit work through volunteering. Volunteerism was true and valuable to me and my family. I was raised by a single mom who said, "Yay, somebody else has got to be worse off than us." And so we're going to give. And so that taught me how to give back and want to be around people and to see people win. And so I moved into nonprofit management when the industry for IT kind of crashed. I think everybody can remember those days of seeing the CEOs kind of on the CNN news and all of that. And so I decided that I wanted to go into this career path, and it took me down from children to adults to where I get the honor and the pleasure now to be here working with seniors. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I'm glad to be here.
Kenya, we are so glad that you are here with us. Emily.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me as well. I'm really excited for this conversation. So as Jennifer said, I am an architect and planner with Perkins Eastman. I actually devote half of my time to working with clients in senior living environments. So I do a lot of master planning and working with clients on repositioning and reimagining what their campuses are going to be, and also completely new environments, new campuses, new satellite communities, things like that. The other half of my time, I am the firm's people culture manager, which means a lot of things, sort of up for a lot of interpretation. But I've been doing that role for about 2 years now. Actually, July 1st will be my end of my second year. And so I've had a little bit of a windy career path. And I think, unlike Kenya, I actually have not had a lot of solid mentorship, which I think sort of led me on this windy path. I do have an undergraduate degree in architecture, and I was perhaps I left architecture immediately after I graduated because I don't think I had a good mentorship, sort of set of mentors in college to kind of lead me on a path that I was more interested in than straight architecture. I don't like to design buildings. It's not really my thing. And I discovered kind of along the way that there were no people in architecture in the way that I experienced, and I learned. I went to the University of Virginia, which is a much more traditional program than a lot of other schools. And all of our drawings didn't have people in them, our renderings, we didn't really use computers, but even we were never encouraged to really think about the user experience of being in buildings. So I left architecture. I worked at Borders bookstore for about 10 years as a merchandising manager. I loved it. And there were so many people. It was all about the people, connecting the people to the books that they were looking for, what would inspire them, the experiences they wanted to learn about. And I really loved that job. And if Borders still existed, I probably would still work there. At some point, we could sort of see that things were, going a certain direction. And I said, well, I've got this architecture degree. I do love design. Let me see if I can do that. So I worked in design build firms in DC for a while. And started to have a little bit of mentor relationships with some of the architects that I was working with, who encouraged me to go back and get my master's because I could only go so far in my career. I couldn't get my architecture license until I had a master's degree. And in grad school, I went to Catholic University for grad school. That was where I really found the mentorship that I was looking for, and even didn't know that I was looking for it. And I was encouraged through talking to some of my professors to get a dual degree in and urban planning. And that was where I could finally connect two things that I loved into a career that I started to make my own. And so after I graduated in 2016, I moved to Pittsburgh and started working for Perkins Eastman. And it's been exactly the right fit for me in terms of master planning, and also this combination of sort of architecture and senior living, which has, as far as I've been exposed to, the most meaningful connections to people that I have been able to find in the world of architecture. The work that we do is so, it's like mission. It's mission based in a lot of ways, particularly when we work with not-for-profit clients. But there's a certain sense of vocation about what we do. We're talking about end of life care in a lot of ways that has a mandate to it. And I love working with clients and finding those really important personal connections within the built environment. And so the people culture manager side extends kind of beyond just working in our projects and our clients with our teams as well. So I work with all of our studios. We have 24 studios globally, about 1,000 people across the world. And I've been to all of our domestic studios, and I work with the studios to understand, okay, how do we connect to each other? How do we make better project teams? How do we work together in ways that are improving both our internal relationships and our projects, and particularly through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because we want our employees to feel like they really belong here and that they want to stay for a while, mentor other people, create this environment of belonging that will really improve both our working relationships, again, and our client outcomes. So it's my little windy path.
So, Emily, you glitched out a little bit when you mentioned your dual degree. What are the two? What's your dual degree in?
I have a master's in architecture and a master of urban planning.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So like I did last time, if you were here, I was pulling out nuggets and gems, and I'm going to do that again. And what I'm going to ask you all to do as well, when you hear those gems that really resonate with you, or even just like, wow, I didn't know that, feel free to use the chat box, use your emojis. We want to make this as engaging as possible, and it can be hard to do that, via Zoom than in person when you can hear that, oh, ooh, ah. So feel free to engage with us, use your emojis, use the chat box. We're going to move through the questions with our panelists today, and then we're going to make sure that we have some time at the end to really chat with one another and dialogue together. So Q&A, discussion, we're going to make sure we have some time for that at the end. So a couple things. First of all, can you geek in stilettos? That's another Xable quote. I love that. But the idea of detours, right? And for both of you talking about that windy, things don't always kind of go the way you might plan or expect to. And the beauty of mentorship, or to Emily's point, lack thereof, that kind of moves us into areas where, okay, I thought this is where I wanted to be, but it looks like it might be time to shift. And that the work that we do in this industry and field of aging services, how meaningful it is. And for all of us, for it really, it's a vocation, whatever role we play in this work, absolutely, it's a vocation, for us. So, all right, let's move into the meat of the questions. Emily, you talked a little bit about this. I'm going to ask Kenya to start with this question. Talk about your mentoring experiences. What have they looked like, and how have they shaped your career?
That's interesting. So, and I appreciate, Emily, you being vulnerable and saying that it was the lack of, because I think for me, being a woman of color, I was determined that I was going to seek it out. So it wasn't that it just showed up. It just kind of was like, here are opportunities that I really want to try. And I'm kind of one of those individuals. I'm an out-of-box thinker. I believe that you don't have to always go one path to become who you want to be. And so because I was that person, I knew if I wanted to branch into new fields, then I needed to connect myself with someone who knew the business. So I'm a connector. I believe in connection. And so when I came out of IT, I was coming home to 2 children, never thought that I'd be a stay-at-home mom. I was like, what in the world is this world? But I knew it started immediately there. And I bring that up because it's like stay-at-home mom. I went and joined an organization called MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers. I mean, I literally like bulgariated my way in. I pressed into the door. I wasn't invited. I think you were supposed to sign up and register. And I was just like, look, I'm in need. I never thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I love these little people. However, I need support. And so I think, I'm going to be honest, it started right there. If I had not just said, you know what, I'm not going to do this successfully. I mean, of course, I'm a mom. And so there's those natural things that are in you, but I went and sought it out. And it was from there that I learned in that space and this was a space, I was the only African-American mom in a room of all white moms that are stay at home and had never worked outside of their home. And here I was a software engineer. I was the one who did not plan to be home. It was just what happened in the industry. But what I discovered is I came under those moms and I had the opportunity to become a better mom, a better leader. And I will actually say that I began to speak at MOPS and it developed me to the point that I then began to pave out my career I'm interested in nonprofits and I'd like to go that direction. So when that door opened, I decided, okay, I have a passion for teaching. I had a passion for causes that I could be a part of, events and things like that. And so I literally started doing, joining committees and boards that I could just help. So I was doing stuff with the Heart Association and CASA and organizations, and they just saw my gift in it and began to pull on me. And then I had to be honest with them and say, look, I know I seem like I'm really cool, but I have no idea what I'm really doing, and I really need some help. I have a passion, and I think we have to be honest with ourselves that you can have a passion all day, but in order for us to be successful, you really have to have some leadership. And so I told him, I said, I'm glad you see the gift. So now how can you help me to really develop the gift? Because I really want to take it far. You know, sure, I can put napkins on the table and I can rah, and I could be your nonprofit like cheerleader out there, but I really want to be successful in it because I think I can go somewhere with it. And I'm a legacy builder as well. And I want to show my kids that they actually can leave a handprint on the world. So how can I do this? If I'm going to go this way, I wanted to do it well. And that really is where it started for me to really, again, press in to say, I need help. And it developed from there. I began to do work with some of that hard work with children. That's really how I branched into nonprofit management. I started working with sexual assault and abuse and molestation and bullying, and doing that work as an instructor, and then began to build myself as a leader under the mentorship of a Jewish woman who saw value in me. And so I'm a true believer in saying that, yes, you find those who look like you, but at the same time, there is value in every single leader, every single person out there. And this was this Jewish woman that saw value in me and said that I could see you go far in nonprofit management. You're a leader, you're creative, you're innovative, you think outside the box. I take risk. I believe you can't live without them. And so she saw that and she didn't run from it. Nor did those moms of MOPS run from me being this only Black mom in there. And so I just would say that that has built my career. I mean, from step to step, being introduced to the next and the next. And how I actually got into senior living, I volunteered first and foremost. I drug my kids to nursing homes because, again, we were going to give back. But I moved here from Colorado Springs to the DMV, literally had a lifestyle change. I got divorced. I had 3 small children, and I was coming to the DMV, and I was still doing that heavy lifting kind of work with children, but I had an interest in senior living, but didn't know how to get into that. So I had a friend who was in a marketing director, gave my resume to her, and she said, hey, I was in the line of a McDonald's, y'all. I mean, the drive-through line, I had the kids in the line, and she calls and she says, hey, I just put your resume on the desk of this director looking for like a social service manager. And she was like, and it's like a senior living community. And I was like, girl, you do know I have never worked in a senior living community. Like, I've volunteered. I have the social service background and all of the, but I have never worked in it. And she was like, I think you're going to love this woman. And I went to the interview. It was one of the most craziest interviews I've ever gone to. The employer, she was from Ukraine, and she had this thick accent. And I mean, I literally thought the way she had this interview, she had a dog in her lap. And I felt like I was being interviewed by the mafia because she had such a thick Russian accent and she's petting this dog. And I thought, okay, this is the craziest interview I've ever had. And she later told me that if the dog didn't run, she knew then she could trust me with her seniors, because many a time interviewers that came in, the dog would go to the corner, would bark at them. And that woman invested in me because I walked away thinking, yeah, I won't be going there. I don't see how I'm going to make it in this place. Plus, she seems a little crazy with the dog and all of that. And she saw something in me. She said, please come back for a second interview. She gave me tips of how to come back. When she walked me around, this is how I really thought I was with the mafia, because she was already introducing me to team members as the social service manager. She was like, oh yeah, by the way, meet Kenya, the social service. Mind you, this is supposed to be the second interview. I'm supposed to just be doing a tour. But this woman has become a mentor. She was my supervisor who said, if you trust me, I will develop you into the greatest leader you will become. She said, because you already have it in you. and she has poured into me. She did drive me a little crazy with some of the ways that she was very innovative in how she taught me as a social worker, and to grow in the field. And even to this day, I just had dinner with her a week and a half ago, and she was giving me the wag of the finger, and she sat like we were in the Godfather, like the table, and she had her arms crossed, and she had like this agenda of what we were going to talk about. But the investment in that, and if I would have walked away and said, okay, that was a bad experience in an interview, I don't think I could do it, I don't know who this woman is, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Wow, Kenya, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love, so a couple things I want to pull out, right? You were determined to seek it out, right? And so I want, all of us to hear that and be reminded of that it won't be like somebody will just come up to us and say, "Oh, I want to mentor you." It really is, I mean, it's a relationship, but most of the time it's really us saying, "This is what I want," being clear about that and seeking it out. I love too, pressing into the door, being that connector, and the reminder that it's okay to ask for help. We do not have to go it alone. There are folks who have paved the way before us, and many of them are opening the door for us. So it's up to us to take the initiative to go ahead and walk through that door. There is value in every single person out there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So just remembering these things on our own mentorship journeys, and how we play a role in that. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Emily, would love to hear more about your mentorship experiences and like you said, even the lack thereof and how that shaped you.
Sure. So, not to go like all the way back, but I'm the only child of a single mom. So my childhood was very quiet. There was no conflict. We're like two peas in a pod still. My mom lives like 15 minutes from our house now. Um, so I didn't know a lot of how to move through the world or who I really wanted to define myself as until I got into places where I was forced to make those kinds of decisions and connections. So I had a very sort of shy, quiet upbringing and into young adulthood. I was kind of a hermit in college. Like I didn't do any extracurricular things. I really just focused on architecture, and I didn't end up going back to grad school until I was 35, because that was the point when I realized I knew what I want to do with my life. I'm going to figure out what the path is, and I'm going to find the people who are going to help me do that. And that was when I got to Catholic and their dual degree program. The woman who was the head of the planning department at the time was a Black woman, Hazel Edwards. She's one of the only Black women to be elevated to the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Certified Planners, which is a really big deal. And she also was appointed by the Biden administration to the National Fine Arts Commission, which I think there are 8 or 10 people on that commission, and they make all the decisions about the planning in Washington, D.C. So these things were happening after I graduated, but I could tell like this was going to be an important relationship, and so I became her assistant, her research assistant, and she exposed me to all of these things about the built environment that I hadn't ever thought about before. So she was studying the planning histories and evolution of HBCUs. And I didn't even know what an HBCU was. And I didn't, Google, what does that mean? And, okay, I got it now. Historically Black colleges and universities. And I didn't know that that was a thing. I hadn't ever been exposed to it in my education. And she also was studying how planning specifically in Tyson's Corner, and the like significant changes to that built environment have been affecting faith-based communities. There's a lot of churches that are either not there anymore or have been converted to other uses. And what is that doing to the fabric of our society and these connections and really important institutions that are really vulnerable when they don't have political power? All of these things were really new to me at the time. And it was through this like different perspectives that she was bringing to my education and to our relationship in this research space that I started to see the world differently and wanted to even get more perspectives, learn more. What else is out there? Like, what is going on that I don't know about yet? So that was kind of my journey through grad school, was just like soaking up everything that I could, and every person who was willing to talk to me about their research, what they were doing, what they were bringing to the world of research, and their perspectives on the built environment. And then I got into the firm, Perkins Eastman, and started to really understand the dynamics of the architecture industry and how white and male and straight it has been for its entirety of the history of architecture, and started to move into these spaces. Now, I started working there when I was 40. And really, for those of you who are past that landmark, you really get the confidence to say what you mean and advocate for things that are important to you. And there's a little bit of power that comes from the just life experience. And I really felt like I couldn't just sort of sit by and have things happen to me anymore, but I wanted to be one of those catalysts for change. And started, so then that's when I applied and had a lot of people advocating for me to take on this people culture manager role, because now I do have a place to advocate for other people. We have a really strong women's leadership program in every one of our studios, regardless of how many people are in that studio. And I'm sort of helping to guide our employee resource groups so that they have a voice and a say in how we not only sort of celebrate our differences, but also professional development opportunities to really make sure that we have equitable experiences and opportunities for all, regardless of background. And that was also when I started to realize that HBCUs have really fantastic architecture programs, but they are not respected in the same way, particularly in architecture, because they always go to the Ivies. Harvard, sure, they have a great architecture program, but the ability for people to get into that program, graduate, have that exposure is really not equitable, at the very least, to say that. So I was able to say, hey, why don't we go to Howard? There's a DC office like, a mile away. We should be going to Howard, recruiting students, working with them, being mentors before they even graduate. And that's an important key part of how we improve the pipeline and really build equity within the architecture community. So I feel like I'm really in a space now where I can not only advocate for myself and understand what experiences I want to have, the opportunities that I want to see for myself going forward, but Kenya, like you said, sort of like bring people along. Who can I, support along the way? When and starting to then say, when do I step forward? When do I step back? And teaching other people how to do that. So we have a lot of white colleagues, a lot of straight colleagues. I'm gay. It took me a long time to come out because, again, I was not right in that space. But helping people feel like we have an environment where it is psychologically safe to be who you are. And also on the sort of flip side of that, helping people understand how to create that environment for other people. And the last thing I'll just say real quick is part of that is Perkins Eastman has a really strong internal mentorship program. It is very structured in a way that I think allows for people to come however they are, and there's some support underneath of them. They don't have to sort of figure everything out in this mentor relationships. And I want to say about 75% of our firm participates in this mentorship program. So it's not just within studios, but also across studios. And the program helps to connect people in whatever they're interested in, whether it's building skills or relationships or figuring out how to make a career pivot. And they pair people up with those kind of interests and what they're looking for and what the mentors can sort of provide in that environment, which I think has been a really important piece of our professional development sphere.
Wow, Emily, that sounds incredible that 75% of folks at the organization are involved with that. At the close of our session one in this conversation in April, that actually came up. Do we set up a structured mentorship program? And there was some interest in that. So we may be reaching out to you if that's something that LeadingAge Maryland pursues. I love that you talked about psychological safety. I think that's huge in any of our organizations. And then also when we're really building these relationships with one another. And the idea of just advocating for ourselves and others, right? So the both and of that, and how our life experience allows us to then say, you know what, I can't just sit back anymore. Here I have an opportunity. Let me step up to it. So thank you. The being a catalyst for change, so huge in all of
Mhm.
our roles. And what does that look like for us? When do we step up? When do we, step back? Oh my gosh. Okay. What I'm going to start doing, I'm going to start trying to type some of this stuff in the chat box because, man, it's so rich, and I want to keep us moving because we can talk a lot. I would love just listening. I'm like, oh my God, it's so good. All right. You touched on this already, but I want to see if there's anything you want to add to this about mentorship, and its importance to your career advancement. And Kenya, I love that story around your future supervisor and her dog, and absolutely how she led you into that first experience in this field. But would love to see if any other examples come up for either one of you. And Kenya, we'll go ahead and start with you. How else has mentorship been important in your career advancement?
So I'm going to say, like, for me, I really appreciate when Emily was just speaking in reference how intentional her organization is in reference to mentorship and really seeing the benefits of it. And I think sometimes that when we're trying to advance in our career, we focus so much on, okay, is the resume, am I networking at this event and that event, and what's my cover letter look like? And then we really forget what the benefit of mentorship can actually do in terms of career advancement. And for me, it absolutely opened the doors. I wanted, you can feel it's so important to have a confidence in who you are. It's important to know that you belong in a room and that you have a seat at the table. But sometimes that's not the truth of where you are in certain industries. And Emily even spoke about that. And so for me,
You're muted. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're muted.
sorry, I think I got muted by accident. It said all were muted. Um, that for me, in order for me to take the confidence of who I believed I was, and to be able to walk and enter into spaces and to advance in my career, I needed the partnership. I needed to be mentored. I needed to hear and understand information and areas of the industry that I would not have access to if I'm being, in all seriousness. So when we think about DEIB, it's so important that we partner with those who, and I know you're going to ask this question, but I want to go ahead and address for me what helped me is I partnered with those that didn't look like me. And that was really important because if we look in the healthcare industry and we look at senior living specifically, and in 2021, I believe at the annual conference for LeadingAge, Brene Brown was the keynote speaker. Brene Brown whooped our tails at that particular conference. And she brought up a picture that showed the CEOs across, major providers in senior living. And what you saw were white males. Sprinkled in between that were a few women. And she said, shame on us, because here we are in healthcare, and we know that there is a level in healthcare that has immigrants, those of African and Hispanic and Latino ethnicity and background. And that's who we see majority in our direct care, who are doing the brunt of the work, of service, of collaboration, of partnership with our residents, right? And then, finally the door opens up, and now in this senior level, the executive directors are starting, a little bit, your senior independent living administrator, your healthcare administrators, your dining directors. However, it seems as if there's a wall, and there's this, I don't know what it is, an invisible wall of how to get from that level to the C-suite. Mentorship to me is that open door. And for me to continue in my career, I know I have to partner with someone who doesn't look like me, who actually has access to that space, who can actually download knowledge, wisdom, guidance, give me some tools to put in my tool belt. That and mentorship has helped me. I fought to get mentorship. I pressed in, I asked. I mean, I didn't talk about, like, I emailed folks. I met with people over coffee. I talked to people. And that, I'm sure Emily can tell you, like, you just don't all automatically get into this relationship because it is a relationship. And so you have to make sure it's going to be something that matches, that it's a benefit for both. And that you're going to be serious about it. What are your goals? And so I was serious about it because I knew that I live in this body, and I'm okay with who I am in this body, but I'm going to be in spaces that it's not. And I want to make sure that I can come in and be equipped. And for me, that took me, I'm going to be real honest and tell you, for me to take my feelings, right, which are important and valuable to me, yes, but the feelings of what others think about me, I had to toss in this trash can that I've taught my team. I had to throw it away in the trash can, right, of what people thought, and I had to replace it with what I knew I could be, and I could be even greater in the partnership and the collaboration relationship. And so that takes a lot because when, as Emily even says, when you're dealing with a culture who is unable to really is not used to you entering that space, be whatever that is that you represent, it's hard. And I think the best way to get there is in partnership and collaboration. And it has definitely opened doors for me and opportunities. And then it made me say, if I'm gonna do this work and leave a handprint on the lives of the people I get to serve, which is an honor, then it is for me. I have to do the same back. It's not in question. I need to be able to come alongside someone else, other persons, because it's not going to just be one in your lifetime, to make sure that they also have access, that they also have a seat at the table, that they have tools to put in their tool belt, that what I've learned, I'm passing along.
Well, absolutely. I love that. The partnership, collaboration, the tools, being able to not just receive, but also give back. And I love the trash can visual because I was just thinking about all the stuff that kind of, oh, I can't believe, like that we kind of can mull on, like just kind of sits with us, but to throw that all out and stand in who we know we are to be, who we are, stand proud in that and not let those voices impact that. I love that. Thank you. Emily.
Can I say one more thing? You just brought up something.
Yeah.
I always believe this narrative of every person brings such value to a room. And if you're not there, it's not the same. And so for me, I really honestly have to say that it's okay if you're not liked, because the bodies that Emily and I live in, the lives that we have chosen and have decided and are at who we are is what it is. And it doesn't really matter if you like it or not. But because I have to face that, it's necessary for me to be equipped. It's necessary for me. I'm not saying it's easy, right, Emily? It's not easy at all.
Not at all.
I'm just saying, how do you equip yourself to manage it? Because your feelings are important. So you got to make sure. That's why mentorship is important, because when you're hit with the darts, it's almost a part of your armor for you to go back to and say, whoo, that was tough. That was a tough one today. I faced a lot today. I got hit today. And it's that mentor relationship that will say, okay, and help you take the darts out and brush you off and say, okay, straighten your shoulders, girl. Fix yourself. All right, now go back in and equip you now. Pour into you, but then say, but we don't quit. Go back.
I'm picturing a boxing ring and someone going back to the corner and getting water, and their coach is like, you got this, go back in there. And, because it can feel like just kind of, being torn down to some degree, and then having to, kind of build yourself back up. So that armor and all that. I'm also sensing a self-care discussion coming up too. Anyway, Emily, thank you, Kenya.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much, Kenya, that you talked about that I want to like echo and amplify, because I think there's some really important things in there, and I'll sort of give my spin on it. So part of my role is working with each studio. So I go to the studios for a couple days at a time. And I am an introvert. Like I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy doing these types of presentations, but I won't be able to talk to anybody else for like the next couple hours because it's really draining. It's not that I don't enjoy it. It's that it saps all of my energy. I give it all out, and then I need something that pours back into me. So we've got a 3-hour drive to DC coming up, and I'm not going to say anything to my car mates. Like they're on their own at this point. But I think that's a really key thing, is just acknowledging what it takes to be a mentor or to be a leader in these kinds of ways. It really takes a lot of energy. And I think that is why a lot of times some mentorship relationships aren't as successful. If that mentor is not prepared for the amount of energy that it takes to mentor other people. You have to be paying attention to what that person is saying. You have to be thinking about, how do I give them advice? Maybe you don't know everything, but you can point them to another person, but you've got to be thinking strategically about who would I want to connect them to. How do I also want to make sure this is growing my own career? And what are the sort of components of this relationship that can maybe help me? But also, how do I not give everything away so that I can't function the next day or the next hour or something like that? At least I have found that to be very true for me. But I've been using the explanation of, if you are not in the room, then this space is not the same, to explain belonging at Perkins Eastman. Like, we have to make sure that everybody feels that if they were not here, that they would be missed. Their perspective would be missed, their attention, their sort of dynamic in this room. And if we can't provide that for any particular person, we either have to figure out how to do that, or like in the last session, you either grow up or you grow out. Like, maybe it's not a perfect fit, but we have to be able to explain that to somebody, how it's not a perfect fit, because we can't just say it's not working, goodbye. Because I think that does a real disservice to the employee. And sort of building on that, it isn't just one person that one person in that mentor relationship that's going to make your career. I like to think about a personal board of directors. You might have heard this phrase, that Harvard Business Review talks about this a lot, because you can't get everything from one person. It's also a lot of pressure to put on somebody. So I started at Perkins Eastman in an untitled role. I have a particular set of skills, having both the planning and architecture backgrounds. So I was able to move into these spaces where not a lot of my coworkers were. They needed somebody who could do master planning from a big picture lens, and then also think about the internal components of a building and how did they get put together and how do they relate to the outside spaces. That's what I do. And so I was very quickly in these spaces with our previous generation of leadership. So all white men, who had built our senior living practice and had mentored people who look like them into the sort of next gen roles. And then I come along and I've got a particular set of skills, and I don't know if they would have necessarily organically mentored me, because I'm a little bit different from them just in my life experience. But I had these skills. They were taking me on trips. We were going, traveling to Massachusetts, to Florida, to Texas. And I had a lot of time with these guys in the car and in airports where we were waiting for our planes. And I asked them every question that ever came up to my mind, because it was a sort of organic mentor situation that I was not going to let pass. And so now I'm moved into this associate principal role where I have a little bit more organizational power, a little bit more sort of understanding of this organization and what we do and how we do it. And I've started to be more intentional about my personal board of directors. So I work a lot with our director of HR. I ask her every question because I don't know a lot about that side of sort of the DEI things. I have a formalized mentor relationship with our controller because I don't know anything about finance. And she actually doesn't really know a whole lot about design. She's a controller for an architecture firm, but that's not her background. So we've sort of developed this reciprocal mentor relationship where she explains how the money works and I can sort of fill her in on okay, what does schematic design mean? What does it mean when we, have a construction set of documents and things like that, which has been a really rich and valuable reciprocal relationship. And I have been very intentional about who I am mentoring. So I actually have 4 mentees within this formalized program. And they all are very different from me in their life experiences across race, gender, ethnicity, generation, all of that. And even regionally, one of my mentees is in California. And the culture in California is a little bit different from the East Coast. And so we talk a lot about the dynamics between people in the studios with her career path and all of those kinds of things. And so I've gotten to the point in my career where I can see both what I want for my career, kind of like what I was saying earlier, but also what do I see for the people who are coming behind me and how can I really support and help them into their roles. And I think that I'm also encouraged all of them to find other mentors because I don't know everything. I'm not going to be able to give them an entire perspective on their careers, but identifying like who has the skills, who is in those positions, who can answer the questions that I can't answer and can really fill in all of the gaps for making the kind of next steps in your career, I think is really key. Those relationships, like you said, Kenya, the collaboration that comes out of those conversations is really, really key.
Wow, y'all are just blowing my mind with the rich themes coming out of here. So I tried to put a lot of whatever I could in the chat box. I know we started a little bit late, but how is it like 5 minutes to 1 o'clock? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm looking at the questions that I have yet to ask you, but you touched on them already in some of your responses. So that's the beauty of, the conversation. I want to check in with the folks here because it's so rich that I want to make sure that if there are specific topics or questions that, folks who came to join us today, that we have some time for that. So we will close with words of advice. So keep that in mind. Kenya and Emily would hear those, want to hear those words of advice. But let me move it back into our attendees here and see if there are questions or topics, things that nuggets that they want to share or questions that they have for you. And if not, we'll go back. But all right, perfect. Kevlin.
Hi, thank you. This is great. Just really enjoyed the rich journey, Kenya and Emily. My question is actually a couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with a resident and talk about, finding someone that does not look like you. This person, completely polar opposite, which is great. But the question that we both kind of walked away with at the end of almost 2 hours of just chatting with this resident was that how does equity looks like? Because we often see that image of, the different heights and providing that block so that everybody can kind of reach whatever the apple or fruit or that. But it was you determine what that equity like for all of those individuals. Same time, it being collective to move that agenda, to move the mission forward in any industry, whether healthcare, profit, nonprofit, whatever it is, wherever it is that you find yourself. How do you create that? What does equity looks like? Said to him, well, let's chew on it a little bit, and then we do have a follow-up chat in a couple of weeks. And so this came in perfect timing. So any ideas on how you would define or describe? There isn't one answer that's correct, but yeah.
Who wants to take this one?
I have a
I'd
quick.
love to start. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
go
for it,
ahead,
Kenya.
Emily, please.
You've got something. Well, I mean, I don't want to get super philosophical, but as humans, we love hierarchy. We want to put people in order so we sort of know where we fit. And I think the key about hierarchy and or about building equity, and I think it really depends on the environment that you're talking about. Is it in your senior living management and leadership team? Is it in your staff? Is it your residents? Those are three very different relationships and identities that are not all going to ever be equitable. So I think the thing is making sure that whoever is kind of identified at the top of that pyramid right now, have them start to be self-aware and self-reflective in a way that they say, okay, this is where I am being helpful in terms of stepping forward to help people out. And here is where I can give up a little bit of my power. Maybe I don't speak as much in meetings. Maybe I encourage other people to say things in meetings, or, maybe I vote for somebody in that kind of resident mix who is maybe has a different perspective than I have, so that they can have a voice at the table. And the only way that equity is going to be possible is if the people with power give up some of their power for the cause of, like you said, the collective. And that's a really hard step, but it's a really key one, I think, in terms of that equity component. Kenny, what did you want to add to that?
One, I just got to go here. There's no snaps in the emoji, so someone talk to Teams about that. We need those. But Emily well said, and I'm a visual person, so when Emily said that of like giving up power, I immediately just felt like the image of seeing someone who's at the top and they're holding up they're holding up like this weight or something like this. And so they have the strength and they have the ability to do all of this because of, and I see like all of here is like education, maybe their background, their race, all of this stuff is allowing them to hold it up. And my thought was just what Emily said, the image of them putting that down. And almost when they put it down, they reach their hand. So not only do they just give up a little something, they also reach out because they have that power. Even if they took it down, they still know, okay, we had a resident that said, regardless of where I enter in, I know that I am a white man. And when I enter that space, immediately it's different than if you walk in there. So how do I make it equitable? Is I pull it down, right? But then I reach and I also pull you over. And like Emily said, I make space for you. I say, I want to hear your voice versus my voice. I want to hear what is your skill set that can actually bring to this project versus me taking it on. And so I'm with what Emily said, and just that image came to me of what equity looks like, because she's right. We always want to, we're not going to make it. It will be difficult for it to be this even thing. And although that is our heart and our desire to have that, but the truth of the matter is that it's not really going to happen in some of those spaces. And yet, if people recognize, if I can just release some of it and reach and bring you right here and make space for you, I think we've defined equity a little bit.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to add one more thing to that. I think it's also a shift in mentality into recognizing there's abundance for all of us. There's enough for everyone. Because when we start looking at the pie and thinking about, well, who gets a piece of what? And then we start kind of hoarding our pieces. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to do that. It's a shift in mindset, recognizing, you know what? I got enough. There's enough for everybody. What do you need? And being willing to share that. So, so rich. Okay, so it is 1:02. And I want to make sure we get some words of wisdom, additional words of wisdom, because they just really dropped it all these gems for us in the past hour. But Kenya and Emily, closing words, anything that you did not get to share that you want to make sure to leave with us. And I'm sorry to rush this, but I recognize some folks are on their lunch breaks. So I want to honor that as well. But if y'all can hang out for just a couple more minutes to get these last gems, please do. All right. Emily, can we start with you? Talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think has been most helpful for me in my career, both in mentorship spaces and not, is being self-reflective every once in a while. I really like to look back on my career every 3 to 6 months and say, what have I done? Where am I at? What chapter of my career am I in right now? And what do I want to do next? And I, again, offer that to my mentees and even my mentors. And just say, this is the way where you're going to sort of be able to understand the landscape around you and understand how you want to get to that next level and who you want to bring along with you.
So good, Emily, so good. I think I would just close with saying, being brave and vulnerable. And that's both in your mentor relationship and with your mentees. Because if you're not going to be vulnerable and you're not going to be able to come to those spaces with an open heart and being able to share your truth, I really don't think that relationship, you're not going to get what you can, really get the richness of it. And then you have to be brave. I mean, Emily sat in the car with these men and at the airport and just picked she was brave enough to say, you might not mentor me. You might not just say, oh, I'll do this, but I'll be brave enough to just start asking questions. And so I just think that that's really important. That's the advice I would leave. Be brave and also remember vulnerability is actually a gift. It really is.
Wow, wow. Self-reflection, courage, vulnerability, all absolute gifts. Now, this is a thing. I know we're just, after one, but for folks that if there are last minute things, if folks gotta go. But if Sarah, can we leave this open for another couple of minutes in case there's lingering things that folks need to ask? And Kenya and Emily, are you good with that as well?
Yep.
I'm good for a few more minutes. Yeah, I have a 1:30,
yeah.
but yeah, otherwise, yeah.
Perfect. So that being said, while for folks that are kind of still here with us, is there anything else that you missed that you need to, kind of say or share or ask about while we have just a couple more minutes? And if not, that's okay. All right. David, you got something?
No, I was going to say thank you so much to Emily and Kenya, for sharing this wisdom and knowledge for all of us on this call. And I'm glad it's recorded so people will be able to, come back and revisit this if they forget or they just want to rewatch it again. So thank you so much, both of you. And thank you, Jennifer, for moderating the conversation. It was excellent.
Thank you. Yes, a big, whatever, a round of applause, because I know it's hard to do via Teams, but Kenya and Emily, you really brought it. Thank you so much. That was really incredible and so super rich. So thank you. I'm trying to practice my emojis. There we go.
And I will say for LeadingAge Maryland, so this is something that you will be hearing a lot more from us on around mentor-mentee relationships. We're about to get very, very intentional with these relationships. And Emily, Perkins, Eastman set the bar very high at 75% of their membership. So if we can get anywhere close to 75% of our members here at LeadingAge Maryland participating in really a formalized mentorship program, that would be absolutely incredible. So you will be hearing a lot more about this from us. I'm going to put a link into the chat. This is a form that you are the very first to hear about. You will be hearing a lot of over the next couple of weeks. It's an interest form. We're trying to gain interest. We're trying to gain what people are needing, what people are wanting from our members of LeadingAge Maryland in terms of a mentorship relationship. So please take a few minutes just to fill this out. Send it to the people on your teams to fill out because we're definitely really excited about this. So 75%, we're going to hit 76. So we'll find out.
I hope so.
The competition is on. But yeah, we are really, really, really excited to be intentional about this here at LeadingAge Maryland. So
yeah, that's so exciting, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
David, gathering for Leaders of Color is in July. Do you have the date on
Yes,
that?
July 24th from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. at Kennel. It's a restaurant in Towson. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but we will send you that information. So please join us. It will be a very good time and a
Is it
chance to
gourmet?
possibly meet a mentor or a mentee. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Gourmet Kitchen? Does that
Say it
sound
again.
right? Gourmet Kitchen?
Gourmet Kitchen at Kenilworth. That's the name of the
Yeah.
restaurant. But we'll send that information out to all of you.
All right. All right. Once again, so much gratitude for Kenya and Emily dropping those gems, for LeadingAge Maryland, Leaders of Color Network, for really hosting this and being intentional about supporting all members and whatever their needs are. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Okay.
Thank you
All right.
all.
Take care.
Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much.